NitPix. There have been hundreds of adaptations of the Sherlock Holmes books by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, but my favourite has always been BBC's Sherlock, created by Stephen Moffat and Mark Gatiss. But sadly, the more recent episodes of Sherlock, Season 3 and Season 4, have significantly dropped in quality. But what killed Sherlock? I will be going over all 12 episodes of Sherlock, which are like 12 90-minute films. As I like to keep my videos short and to the point, I will not be able to address every character, episode or scene. This video will contain spoilers. In TV, genre is sometimes difficult to define, and many people fail to even notice it. Genre is needed to keep the writing focused and consistent. Usually, if a scene feels out of place, it's because it doesn't fit with the established genre. With Sherlock Seasons 3 and 4, it's hard to understand what genre they're trying to attempt. We've got motorcycle chases, dwarves with poison darts, murder, drunk Sherlock, fight scenes, secret evil siblings, secret mercenaries, torture scenes, relationship drama, surreal dream sequences, comedy with kid actors, hallucinations of dead loved ones, and Derren Brown. The tone is all over the place, jumping from comedy to action to serious character drama to crime and back to comedy again. Of course, the first 6 episodes all fit clearly within the crime drama genre. We'd be introduced to the episode with a mystery, Sherlock would discover clues, Watson would ask the questions the audience wished they could ask, and each episode would conclude with Sherlock facing up to the person responsible, and we get a tasty conclusion. This is pretty much the formula with all episodic detective shows on TV, and for good reason, it works. With the episodes after Season 2, the story structure takes an erratic turn. These episodes all follow a different structure, and I'm not going to get into all of them, but the general gist of it is Sherlock sets himself a task: stop this bad person. He spends the first half of the episode following a plan that the audience don't know about, which he explains to John as it's happening. Then something goes wrong, then Sherlock stops them. The problem with this is Sherlock is the world's greatest detective. In this kind of story structure, Doctor Who meets James Bond doesn't accommodate for that. What made the original Sherlock episodes great was the fact that it was old characters and stories being reimagined to fit in a modern setting. Sherlock was a character that could exist in our world, and that realism made him and the show more exciting to watch. As the show becomes more detached from reality, with him going up against billionaire Bond villains and long-lost superpowered siblings, Sherlock's skills become less impressive. In the first 2 seasons, Sherlock is a cold, highly analytic, high-functioning sociopath. He's obsessed with solving cases and showing off his intellect. He quickly becomes agitated and bored if he spends too long without working on a case. In the first 6 episodes, humour derived from his character usually came from his dryness and honesty.
Your mind, it's so placid, straightforward, barely used.
But sometimes he is genuinely witty.
Yes. That was the most ridiculous thing I've ever done.
And you invaded Afghanistan.
Most importantly, Sherlock was a cool character. He was someone you wanted to be, or at least be friends with. After Season 2, his character takes a serious nosedive and becomes a socially awkward, loudmouth action hero. The humour derived from Sherlock is now mostly jokes at Sherlock's expense, laughing at how weird, awkward or strange he is. In one sequence, Sherlock measures the exact amount of alcohol with a measuring tube to get the right amount of drunk. He brings these measuring tubes out with him and uses an app to check the progress. This is something Sheldon Cooper would do. We also have Sherlock dressing up in a poor disguise and doing a bad accent.
You'd like my personal recommendation?
When John is about to propose to his girlfriend and thinks Sherlock's dead. To be a good detective, you need to read humans well and predict reactions and understand motivations. How could Sherlock possibly have thought this would go down well with John? But the most insulting thing to Sherlock's character is his lack of detective work. This is what he lives for, showing off and working cases. Let's look at Season 3, Episode 1. A suspicious man disappears between tube stops. Sherlock takes a few hours to realise that the tube came back missing an entire carriage. Tube carriages are quite big, and this would have been noticeable to basically anyone. So much so that they don't even show the full CCTV footage because of how clear it would have looked. He then realises it's November 5th, and it must be an attack on Parliament. That's all the detective work he does. The terrorist in this episode doesn't have a single line of dialogue. It's never said who he works for, what his motivation for blowing up Parliament could have been. Or Season 4, Episode 2. Sherlock has a beautiful sequence using his skills of observation to determine what kind of person Faith is. just based on the state of a note. The problem is that it's pointless to the plot. It doesn't matter what kind of kitchen she lives in, and on top of that, the note was forged anyway. This isn't even the real Faith, and Sherlock actually missed out on a key bit of information. Sherlock is constantly making mistakes, like when he realises there isn't actually an Appledore vault, when he thinks there's glass in his sister's cell, and when Sherlock fails to notice his best friend's wife is an ex-mercenary. Surely the world's greatest detective would have been able to notice all these things. I was half expecting Sherlock to be pretending to make these mistakes and then later reveal he knew it all along, but that reveal never came. I understand that showing characters' mistakes makes them seem more human, but these mistakes are written in for the sake of forcing drama, and are not mistakes he would have made in the first 6 episodes. The last episode when Sherlock worked a case that wasn't something personal to him was the tube terrorist. After that it's, I've got to stop this man from ruining John's wedding, I've got to stop this evil man from blackmailing Mary, I've got to stop my evil sister. Sherlock is personally involved, he's passionate, and these plot lines directly affect him and his friends. This makes everything overdramatic. Sherlock works best when he is excited over a case, keen to solve it, and share his thought process. Not when it's an overly emotional, life or death, this time it's personal drama. The new episodes suffer from over-stylization, having long sequences which are aesthetically pleasing but generally do nothing for the plot. Stylization in the first 2 seasons was there for a purpose, adding an extra layer to Sherlock's character and telling the story in an innovative way. These were scarce and executed with subtlety, never taking away attention from the story. But the new episodes feel the need to continually add in surreal and highly stylized segments to try and impress the audience. Like when Sherlock gets shot in Season 3 Episode 3, we see his mind racing, trying to prevent himself from dying, deciding which direction to fall, how to prevent himself from going into shock. He hallucinates different characters from the show talking to him, and Moriarty in a straitjacket. But what does this tell us about the story? This is a show about an eccentric detective and his sidekick solving crimes. It's not Trainspotting. This is a sequence that doesn't tell us anything apart from 1, Sherlock is very intelligent, and 2, he's been shot, which we already knew. We learn nothing about the way Sherlock processes Mary's betrayal, his fear of dying isn't explored, and he comes to no realization regarding Charles Augustus Magnuson. This is simply stylization for the sake of stylization. Another example from Season 4 Episode 2 is when John hallucinates his dead wife haunting him. At first, this is a great way of showing John's grief and inability to let go of Mary in both a visual and stylistic way. But as this progresses, the subtlety fades and it becomes less emotionally impactful and more awkward and uncomfortable for the viewer. There's a scene later in the episode when Sherlock and John confront each other and express their internalized grief and guilt over the death of Mary. This would have been a great scene, but John's hallucination of Mary is constantly taking away the attention, pausing the drama and making weird comedic comments.
Oh, I bet she isn't dead. I bet he saved her.
Are these supposed to be funny? And then in the first episode of Season 3 we see this woman's fanfiction interpretation of how Sherlock faked his death. I wonder why that was written in. They killed Moriarty at the end of Season 2, but he's still such a fan favourite that they feel a need to write dream sequences and flashbacks to bring him back. At the end of the 3rd season they made it seem like Moriarty would be returning, so they could have a good cliffhanger, but then they realised they couldn't really do that.
Moriarty dies. He's dead. Yeah. He shot himself in the face. What more do you want? Do you think they were up on that rooftop and faked suicide at each other? What a waste of a scene that would be. Were you faking? I was faking too.
It would be.
So what do? Invent a secret evil sister for Sherlock, who's doing Moriarty's work from beyond the grave. She's so intelligent that anyone who speaks to her for longer than a minute immediately becomes a brainless zombie who will do whatever she says. Right, okay. It's clear that Gatiss and Moffat were tired of writing conventional Sherlock episodes and wanted to make something different. That's why they parodied their own show with a 15-minute comedic sequence when Sherlock gets drunk, which feels more like a Red Nose Day or Saturday Night Live sketch. They then made an entire episode set in Victorian London, which isn't canon at all and is just something different, I suppose. There's a need to get a reaction from the fan base. In Season 3 Episode 1 they deliberately make the show look bad, only to pull back the curtain and say, ha ha ha, tricked you. or when they gave Sherlock a girlfriend only to reveal it was part of a plan to get into an office, which is an incredibly convoluted plan for doing something very simple and is a contrived attempt to get a reaction from the squealing Sherlock fans. But the ending of season 4 gives us some hope for the future of Sherlock. There's a small montage of Watson and Holmes rebuilding 221B Baker Street as they solve crimes together. Mark Gatiss said, "Our original intention of the series was to go back to the beginning and see them as younger men, and restore it to its factory settings." Restore to factory settings. That means we could be returning to the same tone and genre of the first 2 seasons. Maybe Sherlock will finally go back to being an elusive, stern, sharp-witted detective who actually does detective work. Oh. Well, that's probably just a rumour, but do you think they should make a new season or just let the show rest? Let me know in the comments and subscribe for more TV show reviews like this one. Follow me on Twitter to get updates on my next video and even help me choose what to cover next.